So I'll start with a personal introduction. So my name is Pepijn, and I'm working with DetACT. So with DetACT, we're doing fraud detection, fraud prevention for banks across Europe. And today I want to talk about the significant shift that we have in the threat landscape. So something interesting that has happened. Now we have generative AI. You know, it's not something that we have as banks, but it's something that attackers have. And that's where we see the biggest change today. So I want to give everybody a fair warning for the impact that this can have, but I also want to give some help about how do you go around and mitigate that risk. Can you go to the next one? Yeah. So first, to put it in a historical perspective. So right now, every bank is using automated systems to detect fraud. So if you go back in time, and where do we see these automated systems making fully autonomous choices? So the flash crash is a very interesting event, on the stock market. So there we have, in half an hour, so instantly Dow Jones crashed 10%, and there were different factors at play, but one of the significant factors was one person who really understood how does the system that is making these autonomous choices work, and how can we influence it. So one person was in the UK in his attic room, so the real classic story, managed to trigger the sequence of events. It was really significant impact. And he was buying on the dip and selling on the high in the same half hour, so he made a lot of money in that sense. So this is really posing the same great analogy for what we're seeing in fraud detection today. So we all have our own systems, we have our defenses set up, and if there's somebody who understands this and who can manipulate this, so they can cause the same effect. So we've seen it in the past when we had desktop malware. So there was quite a scary time for the people who were working in anti-fraud back then. The money was flowing out really quickly and nobody really understood what was happening. The time it took to really understand how the threat actors were working and what you can do to detect this and combat this. So by the time there was so much money lost already. And then today the main threat that we see is more related to social engineering. So people have become the weakest spot. So it's not yet a fully automated game. But if you look at the fraud losses that we have today based on social engineering, so these numbers are used. This is numbers that we haven't seen before because we've become so much digital. And then, in the Netherlands, we always at the same period where everybody has to do their tax payments. So this is one of the peak moments for phishing. So the phishing sites that we spotted this year, so they incorporated this full commercial chatbots. So these were attackers having expensive subscriptions on expensive chatbots. Already automated part of the process. And if we see these first steps already today, so we know that it's just a matter of time before we will see the big campaigns with fully automated social engineering from the first moment to the last. And this is something that we are not prepared for. The one thing, so we are all talking about AI and how we can use it and how it's our friend. That's the key thing, it's not always our friend. So if you're an attacker and you have to find one weak spot, so this is where AI is perfect. Specifically generative AI is really made for social engineering. So that's its key purpose. So that's why Meta is building it, that's why Google is building it. So it's really a social engineering tool. And for us, trying to use it as one place to really defend the entire bank, right? That's not using the right tool for the right thing. So we need to do something different. And to put it into perspective. So the main use case that I see today for AI is we're using loads of historical data and we're trying to predict the future based on this. So this is something that we've done in the Netherlands before. So the entire 19th century, the Dutch, they were creating a very unique, very advanced system to protect the country against warfare. So that was the historical warfare as they knew it. So how can you protect the country on the ground? So what happened after that? So they have the new defense mechanism in place. They feel really good, and then the 20th century comes along, and new attacks are coming over the air and no longer over the ground. And if you're looking at what we are doing today in fraud detection, we're focusing purely in history, and we have a huge blind spot for anything that's new. And that's what I call the novelty gap. So if you look at this graph, so you have on the below, so the known threats, that's what we are protecting ourselves for today. And whenever there's something new, so that's new exposure, we wait until it hurts, because when it hurts, people start, systems start beeping, and it stands out. And from there, we start investigating, and we start looking at what can we do, and we pull the novel thing into the known. What's changing now is that the flow is the exact same, but because we are not proactive, because we're waiting until we have a new risk, so at the same time, there's a lot more damage, a lot more victims that people can make because they can fully automate the entire sequence now. So the one thing that I want everybody to be aware of here is that by doing the same as what we have always done, our risk has significantly increased. And I feel that this is a risk that we should not be able to take. So I'm not here to scare everybody, because this is something, if we know it, we can prepare ourselves. So the classic system, as we see it, so this is highly simplified. But we take an AI system, we train it on all the historical data, and then the computer says yes or no. So there's two things, from my perspective, wrong in this picture. So one is we're very weak against new attacks, but the other is also you don't have to control on what the system's doing in this setup. So we're also not doing it ethically, and this is the main difference between us and the attackers, the ethics part. So the first step, from my perspective, is we have to make it ethical. And that is by separating which data is being fed into the AI system. Because AI for fraud detection is good, but you have to give it the right role. So by separating risk identification, so what are the risk indicators that we want to feed to the system, basically creating one curated source that the AI can use for its detection capabilities. That's how you solve one huge problem. And then the next step, we're still not prepared for whatever is new. So we need to look at how can you prepare for the unknown. And the main trick here is look at what is your feedback. So you need to be able to have an instant forensic capability to really identify on a single case. So when we saw the first plane flying, we knew something was different. And that's the same with fraud. So everybody working in fraud, they know when they say a new campaign that is hitting different. You need to be able to dive in immediately and not wait until you reach your victim quota, that you have enough pain that you are willing to act. And if you have identified it, the next question is how quick can you act? How quick can you update your defenses and have your new preventive measures in place? So basically what I'm asking is to take a step back and realize that we no longer have full visibility on the threat out there. There's a new unknown threat, and what we don't know, we cannot fully prepare for it. But if you are aware, so you know that you need to be flexible, you need to be agile, and that's where your resilience comes. So if we were able to, back in the day for the Netherlands, if they were able to realize there's a threat from Uganda, and you could act upon it, and I don't think it would have looked like this, but you can take it into account and protect your strategies. So that's my main question for everybody here. So if you go back, if you're working in fraud, think about two metrics. So what is the time that you need to identify that something new is happening, and after that, what is the time that you need to really have your first preventive measures in place? Because if you're relying on a model trained on historical data, the the fraud percentage that you have in your data is so low, you have to have a really high thickness quota in order for the AI to pick up this system. So have something else in place, complementary, and that's how you get ready. Thank you.